Welcome to our study in the Book of Esther. The theme of this book is renewing of faith, and as we get into the study of the book, you will see why it is aptly named that. Want to, right from the very beginning, let you know that Ezra, Esther, and Nehemiah are considered a trilogy. They are post-exilic books. And this is the one that's sandwiched right in between. And so this is the introduction to the book. We will get into chapter 1 another time, another lesson. So we want to give an introduction. I would say probably this would be the theme of the entire book. In Esther chapter 4, verse 14, "For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this." So here's some background to Esther. And we'll get into things about her in just a few minutes. While Zerubbabel and Ezra and Nehemiah were leading the people back to Israel, many families were reluctant to leave Persia. This Persian population of Jews forms the setting for the story of Esther. When the queen of Persia is banished, a beautiful Jewess named Esther is chosen to replace her. Through a bizarre and intriguing set of circumstances, the Jewish population is threatened with total extermination. Esther's courageous and faith-inspired actions not only save her and her countrymen from certain death, but result in the promotion of her cousin Mordecai. A yearly feast, Purim, is inaugurated to celebrate the deliverance of the Jews. There are no words or mention of God in the entire book. Jew occurs for the first time, but the Hebrew word is Judite, denoting where they were from. The events of the book cover a period of about 10 years. Chronologically, they come right after Ezra 6 and before Ezra 7. So they're nestled in between those two chapters chronologically. Here is a chronological diagram and information sheet that I use on all three books. And you can see where the purple arrow is. Right where Esther comes in. And you can see the timeline between Ezra 6 and Ezra 7 and see the 10-year gap in the years there. And so here is some background information, and I called it from the Persian scroll of Scripture. And that's just a makeup. This is about the Book of Esther. First of all, it portrays, and we can see the symbolism of Jesus Christ, our advocate. Secondly, the author of the book is not mentioned, is unknown, but we'll assume Esther wrote it, but we won't say for sure. It takes place during the reign of Ahasuerus, but we would know him as Xerses in Persia. And he reigned from 485 to 464 before Christ. The dating of the book would be just about right in the middle, 450 BC. These events are 30 years before Nehemiah. There's a character study of Esther. And if you would like to go and just look these verses up, we'll be looking at them as we go through the chapters. But what makes up Esther? Well, we know the Bible calls her beautiful and modest. She's also winsome, obedient, humble, courageous, and she's loyal and constant or consistent. So let's look at the cast of characters we're going to be dealing with in this book. This is about Ahasuerus or Xerses. He's the king of Persia. This name was the Hebrew form of the Persian word, and the Greeks changed that to Xerxes. He was marked by a lack of backbone, and his character wavered with the winds of his emotions. All of his decisions were based on this, to his cost. The latter part of his reign was marked by alcoholism and violent bloodshed, and he was ultimately murdered by two of his officers in 365 BC. So he had a tough life, but yet God used him in the life of Esther. Vashti is the opening queen of Persia. Her name means beautiful woman. As queen, her treatment of the Jewish maidens under her was cruel, and she even possibly tortured some of them. Mordecai is the cousin to Esther. His name means a little man or bitter bruising. He was just the opposite of this in character, and was just the opposite of Haman, who we're going to see in a minute. He was non-compromising in the face of peril. He was an excellent adoptive father, and he had a heart for the people. Hadassah is her Hebrew name, or Esther, meaning myrtle tree. Like Daniel and his companions, she was given a Babylonian name, Esther, meaning star. And Haman. He is the number 2 man of King Xerses. He's the villain of the story. His name means well-disposed, and so he thought of himself, but he was morally and spiritually bankrupt, and we'll see his end. And you can hear the jeers and boos from the crowd. Thought the comic relief would help a little today. The Book of Esther is filled with feasts in this book. And so this is a good reference to go back, but when we run across them, we'll deal with them once again. The first one, King Xerses, chapters 1 and 2. This is the victory celebration, first mentioned in chapter 1, verse 3, against Greece in 480 BC. However, the Persians lost this battle. You say, well, what's that about? Well, whenever kings came back, they always celebrated a victory, whether they had it or not. And they made the people think they had won a great victory, and no one said any differently if they lost. Number 2 is Esther in chapter 7. There's a feast given by Esther to reveal the truth to King Xerxes about Haman. Thirdly, Purim in chapter 9, an annual celebration of the Lord sparing the Jews and foiling the plot of Haman on the 14th day of Adar. Present Jews celebrate by reading the entire book of Esther out loud in public. So Purim is not a God-given holiday. It is one that the Jews celebrate in God's deliverance and God's blessing in the life of Esther and the Jewish people. The Feast of Purim, or Lots, which with Hanukkah are the only holidays established outside the law of Moses, still celebrated by the Jews today. The outline that we will use is a threefold one. There's the Feast of Ahasuerus, or Xerxes. This is about it, and we read about Esther's promotion. Then there are the Feasts of Esther in chapters 3 through 7, and then we will see things concerning the Feast of Purim. This is the Jews' deliverance and a certain one, Mordecai's exaltation. So the outline all has to do with three major feasts that dominate and drive this entire storyline. And with that, I would simply say to you, thank you for viewing and listening in on this introduction to the book. There's going to be one more introductory lesson right behind this one when we're done, and it'll all be about the capital, Shushan, the city, and the history of it, and then digs, archaeological finds of that city. If I can be of any help to you, feel free to email back, and God bless you. Thank you again for watching.